Welcome back to the NCUT movie review. Today we have The Substance, and this was rated one of the highest horror films of the year, so you know we had to watch this.
Demi Moore stars as the main character in this movie. She is Elizabeth Sparkle, and she is a famous aerobics instructor who's on the TV. She's the big Hollywood hit. She's the big superstar, and then she gets old. Dennis Quaid comes along. He plays Harvey. Now, he's probably playing Harvey Weinstein, a version of Harvey Weinstein in this movie. He's a Hollywood mogul. He's a chauvinistic pig. He's like this filthy sort of greasy kind of guy who's just in it for the beautiful women to get the ratings up. He thinks that Demi Moore's character has gotten way too old. They need new blood coming in. They fire her. Demi Moore is downcast. She thinks life's over. She gets approached by someone who says, you can be young again. You just have to take this one pill, the substance. She thinks it's too good to be true, but she can't get over the fact that she's not the it girl in Hollywood anymore. So she wants to be the young, famous girl she once was. So she goes through with the procedure, with the substance. And then in one of the craziest scenes you're ever going to see in a movie, which completely came left of field, Margaret Qualley is literally born. Born out of the back of Demi Moore's character in a xenomorph-esque scene that is honestly horrifying. And then she is now the young version, and only one can be awake at one time. Demi Moore's character now goes to sleep, and she has to be fed by Margaret Qualley's character to stay alive, essentially, while Margaret Qualley's character lives. And the one stipulation that this substance had was every 7 days they must change back to the other person. Otherwise, things go wrong. And the movie is essentially, at the basis, a look at the ridiculous beauty standards, especially in Hollywood, but also just in life in general, predominantly for women, but just overarching what the lengths people will go to try and stay beautiful or to stay in the spotlight.
So Margaret's born to be the beauty standard. She's the younger version of Demi Moore, and she's basically going to take over her role now as the aerobics instructor, because you can't be having over 50-year-olds, apparently, according to Harvey Weinstein over here. And as Geordie was alluding to, things do go wrong, and this movie takes the turn of the century. It becomes almost unwatchable at some times, but because it's like a car crash on the screen, you just can't look away. This is a first-time viewer not knowing anything about the movie whatsoever. I actually still am traumatized a little bit to this day, and it's probably been a week since we've watched it?
At least.
It's just insane about how traumatizing some scenes can be, and this is one that stays with you. So definitely hit the hallmark of one of the most anticipated horror films of the year.
We should preface by saying, in this movie, when Demi Moore goes and gets the substance, the person who gives it to him, the doctor, they say, you are the same person. Even though it's two different people, you're the same person. And this is one of the most interesting things I found about this movie. Demi Moore's character is literally essentially having her life force sucked out of her. And still, she goes, no, I don't want to stop this. I want to keep Margaret going.
Would you like to stop?
I'm fine.
Why? Because the draw to being that famous star once again is so strong to her that she can literally not resist it, that she's willing to sacrifice her life for it. That's why I think this movie got rated so highly, because the substance of it was so good. The writing behind it, and actually the plot behind the plot, was incredible, because you're watching Demi Moore's character and you think to yourself, why wouldn't you just stop it at your finger turning into a haggard old rotten potato? But she can't stop it because she sees the billboard of Margaret Qualley being young, being what Demi Moore once was, and she cannot let that fire go. It's almost like sports stars who just can't let it go, or they can't ever get that thrill again, because it's like, what am I if I'm not trying to be this? And that is what this movie touches on in a way of beauty standards, which, look, models probably feel that too. When you've been a model your whole life and then suddenly you're outcast because you don't quite fit the mold of what a model should be. No doubt they go through this, and they probably would sacrifice themselves. I mean, look how big beauty products and beauty augmentations are in the world today. Probably bigger than they've ever been. Everyone's getting things done to themselves. So this movie is right on brand for the world right now, and also probably what women in Hollywood go through.
And especially at the start, as Geordie's preface with the substance, when the doctor does offer them this option, do you want to opt out of it or not? Because it's never pressed on them that they have to stay with this option. There's never ever pressed. They're allowed to exit whenever they want. This is all on their own volition. Demi Moore seems to just love this new youth, even though she looks like Gollum from Lord of the Rings. She's literally looking like an old hag. It seems to me that Demi Moore just wanted all the surface level things. I think this movie also goes for a lot deeper, meaningful plots and subplots, and the writing to this would have just been layers on layers. And I just don't know even how to dissect half of this movie, to be completely honest with you, because there's so many different little niches that they go into. And you definitely saw that when they had the juxtaposition between her and Margaret.
It was definitely like the typical indie sort of film that knocks it out of the park, where it's not like this big budget movie. It probably won't be remembered forever and ever and ever, but it's one of those movies where people will talk about it and go like, oh yeah, I remember that movie. Like, it left a mark on me. Also, another thing that sort of left a mark and also just was great in this movie. The acting. Demi Moore's acting in this movie was incredible. Her body acting was incredible. Her acting of paranoia, of sadness, of getting left behind. She was naked in a lot of this movie, and from what I can read, that was really her body. I mean, it was incredible to watch her sort of do this and just strip back her everything that she is and just sort of bare herself all literally on the screen. That was one part of the movie that was great. Margaret Qualley, I mean, we've seen her in a few different movies. She was great in this, but Dennis Quaid, far out. You were almost like inside a boardroom in Hollywood when Dennis Quaid was on the screen in this fucking movie. You just imagine to yourself, that must have been what it was like with Harvey Weinstein, or that must have been what it was like with fucking any Hollywood producer who was 40, 50, 60 years old with these 20-year-old females up and coming who want to make it big in Hollywood.
That was a Diddy party right there. That's what it was.
He had a moment in this movie where he was Lord Denethor from Lord of the Rings, you know, eating the tomatoes, eating the berries, where there's just like, he's stuffing his face and he's paying no attention to Demi Moore, just talking at her, paying no attention to her. And then as soon as somebody comes in, he just leaves her, ditches her, like, because she's yesterday's news. And you just think, that's probably what happens to people in Hollywood, and also just anywhere in big boardrooms where there's guys or bosses, CEOs, whoever, who think they're better than everybody else. So Dennis Quaid, wow. I haven't seen him in a while. He killed it.
And going off that too, the cinematography for that scene was so grotesque. It's such a close-up of his mouth eating that shrimp, with the sauce all over his fingers, and it kept switching from his face to his mouth to the crunch to then Demi Moore's face of like, what the fuck is going on here?
Yes.
And then it was consistent like that throughout the whole film. It would do that with Margaret when she was putting on her lipstick, when she was working out, because all you saw was her ass. This was like a softcore almost halfway through this when they were just filming Margaret. I'm not complaining, but what I'm saying is that this movie was only trying to grip you, no pun intended, for that scene, because there was really nothing else building the scene apart from the softcore. So this movie, kind of cinematography-wise, was very focused on all close-ups, all in your face immediately. That's what just made it grotesque, was that I hate the eating thing, and I think everyone's got that pet peeve somewhat.
Yeah, and it was also like the colouring in this movie as well, like the colours. So Demi Moore was in this yellow sort of raincoat the whole movie, and that was like a key point. Then you had Margaret Qualley, who, like, her colours were pink and red. Then you had Dennis Quaid's colours. His colours were like orange. And so, like, the colouring in this movie was really interesting as well, and it sort of gave it that, I know this isn't the way to describe it, but almost in a dystopian sort of vibe in a way, where it almost wasn't like they were in the real world. They were in, like, this sort of make-believe land, which by the end of the movie, it pretty much is make-believe land, and it sort of adds to the whole vibe of this movie that everything's not quite as it seems, and also the substance. Can you trust it? Can you not? It's almost like, it was almost a dream in Demi Moore's mind of, like, if you want to go down this route, stop obsessing over this, because this is what's going to happen. And that's sort of what everything sort of added up to for in this movie.
The fashion, you could probably compare it to is Zoolander. That would be very similar fashion for this movie. It was kind of in your face. It was very runway-like, but also had that dystopian look to it, like a bit of a Neo Noir vibe, but without, obviously, the black and white. But then going on from that, another underlying thing I noticed in this film was at the very end, I won't spoil anything for anyone who hasn't watched it, but the substance seems to be able to manipulate in not the way that they originally found out it does. What happens from that is kind of telling you, at least this is how I took it, is that you just got to accept yourself for the way you are, and whatever type of augmentations you want to put on yourself is just not worth it at the end, because the end is always catastrophic. That's how I took this. Now, that could be completely wrong. For me, it seemed that that's where the scene was pushing towards, and the whole script was focusing towards that.
Otherwise, you're going to end up like Gollum.
Or
/ barbarian / fucking
hey you guys, or Mickey Rourke, really. Poor bastard.
I mean, at one point Demi Moore's character was Mickey Rourke in The Wrestler, and then she turned into the Goonies. And yeah, the prosthetics and the special effects and the makeup department really did a good job in this movie. I mean, when you watch this movie, you'll see the fucking creature at the end, like the Goonies. He's literally there. It's the Hills Have Eyes bullshit, right? And poor Margaret Qualley's boyfriend wakes up to that and has to, like, see it in all its glory. As
always, if you're a big fan of our reviews, we wrap these up with a rating. I'm going to rate this watchable, but I wasn't a fan of this by a long shot. I just think it was so weird. And I mean, by the way, Jordy and I watched this when we were 16, 19 hours underslept. We haven't slept. So it was kind of a hard movie to grasp with such deep, meaningful concepts that we just went over our head because we were that tired.
And we're young. Sorry.
Yeah, it was seriously just a hard movie to watch. And I was hard while watching it.
I would definitely rate this movie watchable. I think for us, we're a younger crowd, so it might not have hit us the way it would hit maybe the older crowd that it was maybe catered towards. But it was also just a good sort of introspective look into society today, beauty standards, how ridiculous they are, and how ridiculous mainstream augmentation of yourself is to become like whatever the standard is. It's just honestly crazy. You can't beat Father Time. But I think an older crowd would really sort of enjoy this movie and take a lot away from it as well.
Anyway, guys, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the review, and tell us what you thought about this movie as well.
Question of the day: what's your favorite Dennis Quaid movie? For me, it has to be The Day After Tomorrow with Jake Gyllenhaal. My God, that movie was great.
Looking at his filmography here, I would say Legion.
Great movie. Baby's gonna die today.
Or if anyone's watching movie 43, special shout out to that, because it's one of the fucking most weirdest movies I've ever seen. Anyway, guys, don't forget to like and subscribe once again. Peace, we out.
Peace.
And cut.